Mel Speece was born in Chicago in 1954 into a military family. Mel's father was a career soldier and his mother was an army nurse. His father fought in World War II and in the Korean War. He joined the military because it seemed like the right thing to do, even though it wasn't very popular at the time.
If you enlisted, what inspired you to do so?
Well, I grew up in a military family. It seemed like the right thing to do, although it was not a very popular thing to do in the 70s. I wanted to fly airplanes. I went to Illinois to be a Navy pilot, and then once I saw Marines, I realized I needed to be a Marine.
When and how did you meet your wife?
At a bowling alley on a blind date. I was a lieutenant serving at Marine Barracks, Naval Weapons Station, Concord, California. So it was my second duty assignment. I'd just come back from serving in the 3rd Marine Division in Okinawa. I was a first lieutenant. And so we met on a blind date and got married, and we've been married for 33, 34 years, a long time.
When did you enter the Marines?
May of 1976, and I retired in April of 2013, so just about 37 years.
And
Training Corps. The Marine Corps organizes differently than any other military in the world. We integrate fixed-wing strike aviation with ground combat power in tactical organizations. Nobody else in the world does that.
So can you describe like the various positions you've held within the military?
Sure. I commanded a rifle platoon. I commanded a rifle company in Okinawa. I was at a Marine barracks in Northern California. I was a platoon commander there in the controlled area, and I had the special weapons area. I commanded a rifle company. I was a logistics officer of an infantry battalion, an executive officer of an infantry battalion. I was the operations officer of an infantry regiment. I commanded a deep reconnaissance company. I was the assistant operations officer of a fighter attack aircraft group. I was on Naval ROTC duty as an instructor. I ran the program at Headquarters Marine Corps. I was at U.S. Special Operations Command and Policy. I commanded the School of Infantry. I ran the Expeditionary Warfare School. I ran our Combined Arms Training Program. As I mentioned, Training Command, the Marine Air Ground Task Force Training Command, and Training and Education Command. I was at U.S. European Command as a Deputy for Strategy, and I finished up at Camp Pendleton. I was Commanding General of the 1st Marine Expeditionary Brigade and Deputy Commanding General of the 1st Marine Expeditionary Force. So I did a lot.
So can you describe your, like the role you had in the Iraq War?
I was, well, the Iraq War, predominantly training Marines to go overseas. So I was at the School of Infantry when 9/11 happened, and for the most part the Commandant kept me in training positions during the war years. So mission rehearsals for the war, I was responsible for the transition and training from Iraq to Afghanistan.
The Iraq War was a U.S.-led coalition that was responsible for the occupation of Iraq by foreign powers and the eventual capture of Saddam Hussein in December of 2003. The United States' rationale for declaring war on Iraq was based on the assertion that the Iraqi government was in possession of weapons of mass destruction and posed an imminent threat to the U.S. and her allies. The evidence of this was later found to be non-existent.
The invasion began on March 20th, 2003. The coalition was led by the United States of America, the United Kingdom, Australia, and Poland. The number of U.S. troops in Iraq fluctuated between 100,000 and 150,000. The long-term cost to the U.S. economy has been estimated to be between $3 and $6 trillion.
What changed in the military after 9/11?
wow. I think everything changed. We were at war for real.
When the World Trade Center fell, training of Marines was reevaluated. The Marine Corps started to train using Afghani and Iraqi villages and dressing soldiers up as radical militants, something they had never done before. Training of the Marines went from broad to very specific in a short amount of time.
You know, you're always serious, but the sense of urgency when there's a war. So the focus was greater. Our training was good, it was tough. It changed by an order of magnitude. A lot more shooting, we accepted a lot more risk in training. We altered how we did training. For example, our mission rehearsals before we went to Iraq and Afghanistan were completely immersive. We would have Marines operating in environments. I mean, we built Iraqi villages and Afghan villages at 29 Palms. We put role players out there. We got Iraqi Americans or Afghan Americans dressed, whole scenarios. In fact, talking to wounded Marines, the most significant question I had for them was whether or not they saw anything in either Iraq or Afghanistan that they did not see in training. And to a single person, nobody said anything other than, nope, nothing surprised me. So we went from kind of general training, not knowing where we were going to go, to very, very specific training. I think those were kind of the big things.
29 Palms has one of the largest military training areas in the nation, located in Southern California. Live fire exercises, artillery, tank, and close air support are used for training, in addition to the combat town, a fabricated 2-acre Middle Eastern village, complete with a mosque, militant role players, and an IED alley, and other immersive elements. The military is currently looking into expanding the base by about 400,000 acres.
So I think there was a little bit of confusion when 9/11 happened. I think the recognition that we were at war hit pretty quick. The problem was we'd never been at war with something we couldn't see. And we couldn't see the terrorists. It's not like it was the German army, it wasn't like the Japanese Navy. So it was, and it wasn't like we were in Vietnam. We fought an insurgency in Vietnam. In fact, we didn't deal with the insurgency until a couple of years into Iraq. So it was, I think, very confusing, people trying to grasp exactly what it was that we were dealing with.
Why did you retire? Or, I guess, leave active duty?
It ran out. So I'd completed my time as a major general, and I wasn't going to be a lieutenant general, so it was time to retire.
Okay. Looking back on your life during this time, what would you say your greatest achievement was?
I had a chance to do a couple of things in the Marine Corps that will last for decades. And it really comes out of the training and education establishment. And it's simply because we don't get into those things and change them very often. So at the School of Infantry, we professionalized the instructor staff, and it's now special duty assignment, and it will be that way forever. Every enlisted Marine has 3 people in common. They all have a recruiter, they all have a drill instructor, and they all have an instructor at the School of Infantry. Recruiters and drill instructors have always been special duty, highly screened, incentivized, and all the rest of that. When I took over the School of Infantry, they were just fine, good guys, but spare parts. That's now special duty, and that will never change. I oversaw the complete restructuring of enlisted professional military education, from methodology to content to how we select the instructors, how we develop the instructors, and that will likely not change for decades. So that will last for a long time. While I was at Training and Education Command, we implemented values-based training, a different approach in how instructors dealt with students, DIs dealt with recruits. We implemented that through the entire entry-level training pipeline. And values-based leadership grew out of that. We were doing it because we wanted to instill the core values of the Marine Corps in people better. What came out of it is our instructors had a better understanding of who they were dealing with, and the value of the student, the Marine undergoing training, rose in the eyes of the instructors. And that was phenomenal to see. Values-based training, values-based leadership will be with the Marine Corps probably forever. So things like that that I've been able to touch, I consider pretty significant achievements. We're going to grow 29 palms by 150,000 acres too, and I was pretty significant in that.